Book discussion, Back to Blood by Tom Wolfe. I think the most important takeaway for me in this book, this is a taking stock of what I believe the 20th century has meant for art, particularly modern art, and a trajectory from that into society. The quote of the book is, modern art is imagination without skill. And I think Wolfe is projecting that into society. So it's if you will, it's a plot about art. It's a plot about how art can mean something without having any substance, and how can substance be something without having any meaning. So it's really this convoluted positioning of imagination versus substance. This goes way back to the painted word. I've spoken about this recently. I picked up Tom Wolfe recently for various reasons. One is just entertainment. I think he's a great writer, and Back to Blood is just an fascinating story. It's like Man in Full Light, so it's very similar characters, but it's a bit lighter. It's not as I think it's not as monumental, not as heavy. It's also only half the size, you don't get so deeply ingrained with a Charlie Crocker type character here. The characters are a bit lighter. They're a bit more interchangeable, but there's similarities. The protagonist is this try to do right, always do wrong type of person, but not wrong in a sort of stoic way, wrong in a societal way. So like the same way we have the character in Man in Full that I forgot the name now, doesn't matter, the kid that goes to jail and all that and becomes a stoic. So here we have a character like that, a police officer that is desperately trying to do the right thing and constantly sort of clashes with society, and that's, to me, is a symbol of this lack of substance in society. While we have a clear understanding and imagination of who we are and what we want as people, we seem to be a bit astray from the question of what is right and wrong. So to me, that's the biggest takeaway of the book. This is an entertaining plot. There is sex in here and criminal stuff and all kinds of funny accents are spoken. I listened to the book, so the author is doing the reader is doing a great job in doing accents. There's a very local scene. In this case, it's Miami, so it's similar to Man in Full, where we're talking about Atlanta. Here he's going a bit more south. So if you will, Tom Wolfe has kind of gone from the Bonfire of Vanities, New York to Atlanta, Man in Full, and now Back to Blood, Miami. So it's going all the way south. But again, a very entertaining book, but I think to me much deeper, and really the interesting part of the book to me is this taking stock of what it means to have what the 20th century meant, what its significance, and it overlap into the 21st century, and what that means for society. And I think Tom Wolfe has anticipated a couple of things. He's anticipated the culture wars. He's anticipated the racial tensions not that he's anticipated, they were always there, but I think he's actually almost in a scary way depicted exactly what the problem is going to be. This was written about 10 years ago, so he's definitely foreseeing quite a few of the sort of very sensitive racial things that are now on top of everybody's mind in the political sphere. But I think most, on the optimistic side also, I think he has this almost dark, pessimistic view of society, but then he lets this little door open. He opens this little window that gives you hope for the future. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's May 20th, 2024. This is Krim Dalko. Since the last update, we are down 50 basis points. The market's up 30 basis points for the year. We are down 15.9%. The market is up 12.3%. We're underperforming by 28.2%. So Back to Blood is, I think, Tom Wolfe's last novel. It's a great novel, fun to read, entertaining, and I just want to mention two fundamental things that came across to me. One is the more technical side of things, that is Tom Wolfe's approach to its writing that I'm a big fan of, and the second is his settlement, maybe his account, taking account of what it meant to have a modern art movement in the 20th century, what the cultural significance of that is, and what also the implications of that are for the future of the zeitgeist in the US, but also globally, but particularly in the US. So let me start with the latter. So starting with the painted word, I think Tom Wolfe has depicted a clear picture of modern art, and that is that modern art is conceptualized, its imagination and its words, and then the paintings, they are seen through the words. I mean, this is the main takeaway from the painted word, from the essay, that I think to me is the sort of fundamental description of the 20th century, and not just for the art world, but for everything. And this goes way deep into the weeds. This can be, in my opinion, this can be connected to the emergence of the Federal Reserve as the global central bank. What that means is that we have an instrument in the form of Federal Reserve that can steer economic activity towards what people want it to be versus what should be originally or organically. And therefore we can really imagine our lives and have a almost centrally planned or oligarchically planned, oligarchically not in a Russian way, but we can have few decision makers deciding what is and what isn't. This is what the painted word is sort of describing, or this is how the painted word is describing the art world. And I made that connection with the rest of the world. In my essay, Theory 2.0, I was trying to connect the dots between the painted word and the development in the early 20th century in quantum physics, and sort of this idea that we can think before we see, and we see what we think, is also prevalent in history. In science. And there's a quote from Einstein that says that basically observations are theory laden. I then, in the essay, try to make the connection to today and add artificial intelligence and sort of add the concept that the engineer of today and the future is not creating the solution, designing the solution, but designing the machine which will then find solutions in a probabilistic way. This is the fundamental idea of Theory 2.0, which was inspired by the painted word. So back to Blood, I think here Tom Wolfe is really drawing a line. So this is it. It's kind of, I would say, the end of the modern art movement, because also the plot, I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but you can think of it like this. There is this character that is taking it to the extreme. There's some fake paintings involved, some falsifications, some make-believes. Tom Wolfe shows that even when you show to society that something is fake, they still don't want to believe it, because they do want to believe that whatever they believed in prior is true. You could even connect that to the fake news problem that supposedly we have, which I believe there's no fake news problem whatsoever. People want to believe what they want to believe, and they're fed that kind of information. Today, it's more industrial with social media. It's kind of like you start with what you want to hear, and then you read wherever you find it. It's not the other way around, where you're sort of a blank piece of paper, and then the news fills you up, and then you form your opinion. It's not like that. It's the other way around. Like observations are theory laden, and you start with what you think. You observe the world through your thinking, through what you think is right and wrong, and what you think should be right and wrong, and all those things. This goes back to the righteous mind, Jonathan Haidt. I'm not 100% on board there. There's certainly some things that like every theory can be improved, of course. We're Poperians here, but in general, I just don't think there's a fake news problem. I think the problem with society is that accountability has gone. So we can afford to pretend that we believe X versus Y because we have a mechanism, and it goes way back to the Fed actually, that prints money wherever it's needed. And if that wasn't the case, if we had a Bitcoin standard or a gold standard, people would be a lot more organic, and they would move their thoughts and observations towards what's more efficient and what's more tangible towards their own purpose of whatever it may be, generate wealth, reproduce offsprings, make sure their kids are better off, whatever your goal, whatever your ultimate goal is as a human, you would be driven much more by sort of an evolutionary urge to succeed and not this sort of imaginary urge to just conform with whatever you believe is true or whatever others believe that you are aligned with, believe are true. So I think to summarize this part of the discussion, I think Tom Wolfe, he's a true journalist. I don't think he's not making an opinion. In that sense, he's a sort of Cormac McCarthy light, right? If I take Cormac McCarthy's latest novel, it's very similar. Like it's a contemporary depiction of the United States, and even more contemporary than Tom Wolfe's, just was written later. But it's the characters that speak for themselves. I don't even know what Tom Wolfe's opinion actually is, and I think he's being chastised in today's left-wing woke environment because he just says things the way they are. He talks about the vanity of certain people and races and other weaknesses and strengths and all that, and that just in this environment today doesn't fly. People are offended by everything, and that's why I believe he's also, as a writer, not sort of in the New York Times best-selling list type of circles, which doesn't matter actually. It's almost a good thing as far as I'm concerned when people aren't in those circles. So, but he says the way it is, and it's like I said, a lay of the land. This is what modern art was in the 20th century, and with this book, he's kind of putting a lid on it. It's over, and actually, the plot itself shows that. Again, this is not Tom Wolfe saying modern art is over, but there's a quote in the book: "Modern art is imagination without skill," and I could transfer that quote towards. Wall Street is imagination without skill. Silicon Valley is imagination without skill. A lot of science is imagination without skill. What that boils down to is that a lot of people have very nice ideas, lots of ambitions, but not a lot of people want to do the actual work. You can see that in many ways in the way universities are filled up with immigrants that do all the hard work, the engineering and physics and math. And then the rest of the universities are full of people playing softball and lacrosse and doing alibi stuff just to have a badge. There's another quote actually that's a Tom Wolfe quote. In Texas, they say the man's all hat and no cattle. And it's the same thing. It means that you want to pretend to be a cowboy, you wear a hat, but you really have no connection to nature. You're probably a marketing executive in Dallas or something like that. You have nothing to do with actual cowboying. So this urge to be something and not actually do the work, I think that to me that is the biggest takeaway from The Painted Word and from Back to Blood and maybe most of Tom Wolfe's work. And this is a consequence of his journalistic work, which is just looking at society and depicting society the way it is. So this brings me to the second part of the discussion, which is just the techniques and the literary techniques that Tom Wolfe is using. In my opinion, still the best way to write, and that is number one, and most importantly, it's entertaining. There's a narrative here. Characters are built. There is all the stuff that we care about: love, sex, betrayal, lies, help, brotherly, love, whatever you find in a Godfather movie or in a Goodfellas movie, or even go back to the Bible. It's all about that, and I think Tom Wolfe does a great job. But he embeds those things in the real world. In this book also, the acknowledgments are part of really important because he talks about how he He spoke with real people in Miami, because the book's in Miami, so that's why Miami pops up. He spoke with art dealers, he spoke with cops, he spoke with DAs, all that kind of stuff. And it always stuck in my mind. In Oliver Stone's biography, he talks about how he wrote Scarface, and he literally actually uh, shadowed drug dealers. They let him shadow. I don't know how that happened, but drug dealers, real, whatever it was, Colombians back then, dealers in Miami back then. I mean, that, Scarface obviously is also a Miami story. Uh, and Tom Wolfe similar, not as extreme maybe, but we don't know what exactly. I mean, maybe there's some stuff that he couldn't maybe reveal, such as how art is forged, for example, how provenance is forged, which is you have the forger in the forgery. Forging art is one thing, but you have to forge the provenance. You have to print catalogs with 100-year-old paper to make sure that the experts that look at a certain painting, just an example, let's say you forge a painting like a Vasily Kandinsky, and you say this is a painting that has been in the family of X for 50 years, and it got lost during the Russian Revolution and blah blah blah, and it found its way through whatever some place in Dubai, and here it is, and it's for sale, and then you have, let's say, catalogs which are fake, that show a 1912 show in Paris with that painting and Vasily Kandinsky in front of it. You can Photoshop all these things these days, of course. Printed on paper that is actually that old, with real, like German subtitles maybe that paint some sort of make a joke that was contemporary back then. So stuff like that. I mean, Tom Wolfe must have spoken to art forgers. He probably doesn't even talk about that kind of stuff. So again, I think to me this is real journalism, not something that I've been doing for decades. I feel like I've been in Wall Street as a trader, as a columnist. I've been able to depict the inner workings of the financial markets and Silicon Valley much better than anybody else, because I was in it. I had skin in the game and in both games. And to me, that has always been, one of the biggest prides of my life, is really to have been able to convey that. Unfortunately, my career as a columnist has come to an end a few years ago for various reasons. I still write a lot on Substack, but that's different. Of course, I'm not a journalist in that sense anymore, but that's okay. That's not so important. I think I think the techniques and the literary process and the approach and all these things are, in my opinion, very, very refreshing. And I'm wondering who's taking over the baton. It was Michael Lewis for a while, but then Lewis, in my opinion, he just got derailed by various things, some personal stuff, but mainly professionally. I feel like he went the wrong path, but he was on that path. And there's people. I mean, I think the guy that wrote The Deluge, maybe I forgot the name. That could be one. He has a good grasp of contemporary America, embedded in reality, real reality, and then plots it. McCarthy, I guess he's an older generation. I'm sure they will come, and I'm going to be monitoring and enjoyably reading those books. So to summarize, Back to Blood is it's a great book about one thing, and that is it's the sort of the relay, the transmission of the baton from modern art to something new, and modern art as imagination without skill, as depicted in the painted word. And then we sort of went through Tom Wolfe's career as this is art that has its meaning in the word and in the imagination of people, and that's what matters more than the actual art. Now he kind of does that onion in the end, and sort of the whole thing falls apart in the end. That's how the book ends, with the person that fakes everything actually leaving the country, and that's it. It's over, and there's a new area. There's a new area for modern art, a new art movement. I took my shot in Theory 2.0. The essay is in the show notes, the link to the essay. So I took my shot there of what I believe will happen. where we're going with the zeitgeist, but more importantly also for society as a whole, this idea that we can sort of imagine our reality and then sort of make it happen and not have the substance that's necessary. This away from organic towards centrally planned. All of this, I think, is sort of the result of the painted word idea of theories, observation theory laden, and imagination without skill. We are living still in this world. Silicon Valley is imagination without skill. What I mean with that is you have companies that have great mission statements, lots of nice 10Ks, they go public and this and that, but they don't make any money. They're not real. They're not real because they were imagined. So when it comes to the economic playground, this is driven by the Federal Reserve. When it comes to the art playground, it was driven by the modern art movement in New York. A few cabals decided what is and what isn't. And hopefully we're at the crossroads here. Hopefully we're starting a new era, an area that is more organic, that is more evolutionary in a sense that what happens because it must happen. It's the right way. For example, I mean, this is a tangent, but I just attended a workshop at Stanford about extreme energy, and people talk about fusion and this and that, and it to me it's like, look, it's not what you want, it's not what DARPA wants, it's not what the government wants, it's not what people at Stanford want, it's what can be done. Where's the substance? Where's the technology? Where's the science? Where's the economic path towards success? Those kind of conversations were very, almost a sideshow. What really mattered was how much money can we put into the next national lab, and how much funding can we get, and that's unfortunate. And I think Tom Wolfe's book is, again, it's putting a lid on this. And there's a new area, hopefully a better area, a more organic area, a more progressive area, progressive in a good way, not in a political left-wing way, but in a way where we go back to what matters, So back to blood maybe is in a sense also the title. But go back to what matters. Go back to what really matters. People you can really rely on, ideas you can really rely on, things that stand the time, things that are not subject to the whims of a Fed official or an art critic or whatever, but real things. That would be my conclusion from this book. Thank you.